Hey there, welcome to today's Tech Tuesdays webinar on Informatica 10.4.x CICD features. I'm Brinda hosting this webinar. The speaker for this webinar is Praveen Kumar, who is a Senior Product Specialist from Informatica's Global Customer Support team. Let's go through some housekeeping tips before we start this webinar. The webinar will be for 1 hour. It will include a 45 minutes webcast, and then we will roll over to live to answer your questions. You can post your questions in the Q&A box that you see on your screen, and we'll try and answer them during the webinar and also 15 minutes after that. All dial-in participants will be muted so that the presenter will be able to present without any kind of interruptions. The webinar will be recorded and will be available in the Informatica Support YouTube channel and the Success Portal. The link will be emailed to you as well. You can also post your feedbacks and suggestions for the upcoming Tech Tuesday webinars to the end of the presentation during our survey. The Tech Tuesday webinars is available. The Informatica Success Portal is a micro-learning platform that offers free and unlimited learning to all registered users. Success Portal will show up your success offerings, your customer success manager information, bookings available in the Ask an Expert session, and you will also get to know the customized recommendation and content. Here are a few links that you can go over later to understand Informatica products better, and that will help you in your product adoption journey. Over to you, Praveen. Thank you.
Thank you, Brinda. Hi, everyone. I am Praveen Kumar, Senior Product Specialist in Informatica GCS. I welcome everyone for joining in this presentation on Informatica 10.4.x CICD features. So first, let us understand what is CICD. So continuous integration and continuous deployment, or it is also called as continuous delivery. So it depends on what is the end goal. If you have an artifact that gets released into a repository for a set of consumers, then it is a delivery. Else, if your artifacts are getting installed and configured into a predefined system environment, then it is a continuous deployment model. So it is very important to understand which model your applications, your development pipelines belong to. So here's the agenda of the meeting. So we start with the design, deploy, test mechanism introduction and understand the design and runtime objects and the differences. We walk through the operations that can be made as CI and CD from the DIS and the MRS perspectives. And then we also have a comparison of REST API and the InfraCMD, which are the two mechanisms with which we provide the CI/CD operations availability to the customers. We also have developer tool new features, a couple of features which will be very handy in CI components. And we also have overview of DIS REST endpoint capabilities and a brief overview of object queries, which are very handy to figure out various objects on the design MRS and the DIS and fetch quick commands for certain operations. There is also a need to understand the trigger types which you can have for your CI/CD pipelines. And we have a sample demo architecture for CI/CD pipeline for one of the trigger types. And then we'll start with the question and answer session at the end. So design step involves performing development activities and designing of the objects and storing them into the MRS. So whereas the deploy step performs deployment of the developed objects within or across environments and followed by the testing steps, which look for passing those artifacts over a set of test cases. So the design time constitutes the CI front and the deploy and test framework component constitute the continuous delivery component. So you can perform both the CI/CD operations using InfraCMD and REST API functionalities which are exposed by Informatica. So let us first understand a certain part of the design and runtime objects as well. Okay, so the version control feature helps in consistent integration of the objects. So you can create patches on the application and deploy and perform hot deployment now on the DIS front. So the left part of the screen talks about the CI component, where the team constitutes of administrator and the developer teams who use version systems and create a consistent copy of developed objects. These developed objects can be moved to the runtime DIS, and you can create application patches on top of it. So when a developer edits an object in the developer tool, the developer works on the design time version of the object. So when the object is deployed as a part of an application to the data intelligence service, the data intelligence service creates a copy of the object known as the runtime version of the object. The runtime object is isolated from the corresponding design time object, and you can also see the path structure of them is different. There is no project concept in the runtime applications section, right? And when you access a design time object in the developer tool, you access the object through the model repository. In contrast, when you are working with runtime application, you are only interacting with the DIS. So coming to the CI and CD features which we have, this is the set of options which we have exposed. These are the operations which you can perform on the CI front. Interesting ones are the query design time objects and the tag feature. So the query design time object is a very handy tool or a command, you can say, which can actually help you to come up with quick queries to fetch objects which are needed for your deployment and other activities, and also to check for your, yes, and also it can be very helpful for your auditing purposes of what things are you considering in the current change list. On the other hand, tagging an object and untagging an object helps you to group the objects and categorize them as a part of a single change list. On the continuous delivery front, we provide these operations which can again help you to quickly perform your delivery pipeline activities. The query runtime objects is one of the interesting one here, which again helps you to query the DIS applications and their internal properties. And also you can perform deploy objects to application patch, which is a very most common used command, which would help you to create patches. On the other end, you have comparison that you can do these operations via InfraCMD as well as REST API. But what is the best use case or best purpose for which suits your requirement, right? So some functionalities are not present in the REST API, whereas most or all of the features are present in InfraCMD. So InfraCMD is good if when you need adverse functionalities sometimes. And InfraCMD needs binaries to be installed, whereas REST API does not need. So you can use the same script seamlessly everywhere. So especially when you're using Docker and Circle CI based pipelines, REST API is very handy. And InfraCMD is subject for better performance and given its more resilient features, and has a recent InfraCMD gateway mechanism for running jobs, which is more performant in terms of resource requirement. On the other end, developer tool new features, which I was talking about in the agenda slide, is that you can actually now open and see the DIS applications inside the developer tool itself. Now, instead of connecting to MRS, you can see on the screen you are actually connecting to a DIS, and so you can actually connect to a DIS here, and you can actually look at the application, open the mappings, and see what actual application is present and review its properties. This is a new feature in 10.4, and you can also add another feature is you have a tag view, and you also have an operation feature which you can use to assign tags to certain objects. And these are the list of tags which you can apply to this mapping here in this slide. So coming to the next capability, that is the REST endpoint capability of the DIS. So DIS exposes its REST API using a Swagger API, which the developers can use to build their REST API calls for the CI/CD scripts. So this can be accessed over a web page as shown below. You can also enable ROH service to interact with multiple DIS, which provide a reverse proxy functionality to any DIS in the domain with just the DIS name. So let us have a quick walkthrough of the REST API set of Swagger page. Okay, so when you click on the DIS in the admin console, on the process tab, you will see this HTTP URL now. And when you click on this HTTP URL, you will be redirected to a Swagger page where you can actually convert and try out any of your operations which you want. So I have a sample application request field in here, which basically is I'm going to create this password using pmpasswd command as shown on the slide actually. And you can also see I have given my MRS name and I have given again the password for talking to the MRS. And here you can see that I'm querying that any objects which has been modified in last 120 days. Okay, so I can actually find out. So this is the day count and last modified time. So any object which has been modified in last 120 days can be found out with this. So when I click on execute, I get this output where I get it in a JSON command, and I can see the properties which have been changed, and you'll also get a readily available curl command which you can put up in your scripts and customize it to your needs. So there are different APIs functionalities which is available as I explained in the earlier slides. So you can have the tagging, so you can have application related commands and the REST APIs here, REST API calls here. You can have mapping service related API calls here, and certain operations like compare can also be done. So let's come back to the presentation, and now you can see how the query got executed. So just now we saw a REST API call we made, and so whatever query and calls you make, it goes to the REST API module of the DIS, and the DIS and in turn talks to the design MRS and runtime MRS. Now this is one way. The other approach is again you can you use InfraCMD as well, and you can make a request and you can actually talk with the design MRS and the runtime MRS. So one thing you need to note is that the REST API functionality is provided by the DIS, but there are scenarios where you would be interacting only for the MRS purpose, but still the request would be provided or serviced by the DIS. However, the operations will be performed on the MRS in terms of your API calls. Okay, so when you are making a call to design MRS, it is going to be needing only the DIS MRS related information. And when you are doing runtime, when you are doing something to do with the applications, etc., it would be the DIS, which is also taking the request, but is also taking care of processing the request for you. And once this query is provided to the DIS would basically look on getting the response to you, and the response is always in a JSON format. So coming back to the query again, so we saw the queries way in the REST API call, right? So you can actually write your own queries. You can actually come up with a bunch of query logics, and you can join them, and these are all the list of supported operations, which is also provided in more detail in the documentation as well. So these are the various attributes and operations which you can perform with this. So the one which we performed just now is a query 11, where similar to the query 11, where I took for the last modified time of objects and see for the last 120 days, whichever objects have been modified, I get a list of all those objects in one shot. So now coming to a trigger point, right? So okay, fine. So you are doing your continuous integration with the help of your version control system, and you have a consistent object now ready to get deployed or move to the next pipeline stage, right? So what would you do? So there are ways to trigger the CICD pipeline. So one way is you would have an issue tracking system where you could perform some approval process as per your norms of the organization and come back, and as soon as the request is approved, then we can trigger an automated pipeline via Jenkins or Circle CI, right? Integrations. Second one is where as soon as you commit, you trigger the build operations, right? So you might not need, so you will not need to track it from the Jira or issue tracking system. So in that scenario, VCS webhook is handy. You can also find out quickly, because every time you are triggering based on the VCS webhooks, you will have the commit details. So based on the commit hash, you can figure out which are the objects which are part of the commit hash, and then prepare the script using the DIS REST API and the InfraCMD query commands, and build a deploy patch, and then you can do that. The third way of doing it is periodical schedule. So you check for all the objects which have been modified in one today, and then quickly build all of them and just deploy. So it could be one of the way. So basically these are the three ways you can actually come up with automation parts. So obviously manual operations are still allowed and they're still working, but yeah, having Jenkins or Circle CI helps in automation, and it's easy when you configure your pipelines with these kind of functionalities. So in coming to my demo architecture, in my demo architecture, I have a Jira. I have a version control system based on CSVN, CollabNet SVN control. The developer creates an object and tags the objects into the Jira. He gets assigned a Jira and he starts working on that. And once he's ready with the Jira, he pushes for the approval. And once the approval is done, the Jira will trigger on the Jenkins, right? And Jenkins will fetch those objects which are needed for this particular issue, and builds them, tests them, and deploys them and tests them. And then accordingly, it updates the Jira that yes, it is not successfully done, or it would just deploy it to the production and update the Jira that yes, this has been done. Then somebody can just manually verify the final outcome and close the issue on the Jira side, right? So the entire process cycle is actually controlled in the workflow of the Jira here. So I use these plugins for my internal demo architecture, where I find it was very handy if you actually use this. So one thing you should do is you need to have a Jira Jenkins integration, so that Jira can trigger a webhook on the Jenkins. So and the GitHub credentials caching is another thing. So when you are actually, in my case, this is a Jira issue tracking based trigger, and at the end goal of this is releasing to the GitHub. So while pushing to the GitHub, I'm having a script which should cache the credentials in the shell script, but you could have a different approach of doing it by programmatically. And this is a sample Jira which you can have, which you can see that I have created some custom fields here: domain name, MRS name, DIS name, and application name. And I have a flow here. So when a Jira is assigned to a developer, it gets into assigned, and then in progress he works on it. And once the work is done, he would move it to review, and any of the admins would actually review it, and then it get it approved. Once the approve is done, we have a hook trigger which will make sure that the Jenkins pipeline starts building, and then the build, deployment, testing completed, and release. These are the 4 stages which the Jenkins itself takes care of, moving one after another as the pipeline steps are completed. So this is the typical way how my Jira integration for webhook to the Jenkins looks like. Okay, so I'm querying on all the issues, all the events. So I'm not filtering anything here, but I'm filtering on, maybe it's not visible here, but I can show it here, that I'm having a status here. So when my status is approved, I'm going to trigger this Jenkins pipeline. This is on the Jenkins side. So, and I'm also associating these parameters from the Jira to the Jenkins scripts, so that when the Jenkins script is running, it can actually use these parameters. And this is how my pipeline looks like. I have 4 stages, right? So build, deploy, and then testing, and then push to Jira, right? So here you can see there is a Jira add comment. So once the each stage is completed, the Jenkins would automatically put a comment onto the Jira and move it to the next stage. Okay. Okay, so here is my Jira server. And so let me quickly just create a new CR for this. Let's say change the expression transformation, just something new. Okay, so as you can see, there are fields added here for domain and all the required details. So I just quickly filled in these options here for my CR. Okay, and now I can see that a new CR text6 is created. Okay, and I'm just creating a tag name as text6 here, so which developer can he use in his deployment phase wherever needed, right? So okay, so let's just assign to somebody and then let this work begin. Okay, so I've assigned now it to myself, and let's say start progress. So you can see the workflow which I showed in the presentation. This is how the workflow would be. So we are in the assign now. It has various stages to go through. I'm in the current progress now, right? So now the developer is started working on the issue, right? So yeah, here is the developer's mapping, developer tool, and the developer tool, you can see there is a tag view where a user can actually assign tags to. So I can, as my mapping is already open, I can just add a tag which is relevant to my Jira here. But before that, we need to first create a tag. So you can go to the Windows preferences, and there you can actually create tags in this field, right? So you just click on the MRS and you can add any of the tag whichever you want to. So I'll just add the tag which I specified in Jira. So yeah, this is a new tag I created. Let's say okay, and now we can open the mapping, and in the tag view we can actually add this new tag which we created to this object. So I think we are good. So you should see the tag now in this list. Okay, we see that, right? So I think now the developer do some changes, and just so yeah, it would ask for checkout. So we take checkout now, and once the checkout is done, we have to add the field. And now, yeah, our changes will be saved, right? And then user can check in, and then okay, so the changes have been done onto the version control system, as well as it's taken care by the user, right? So now we have a copy, which is checking in now. Then once this is done, so he has tagged the object and they have already made the changes which they needed to do. Now they can go back to the Jira. So while as you know now that this developer has completed his job, he can approve. It goes to the admin for the approve. Since I am the administrator user, I get the approve button as well here. So meanwhile, before we jump on, so this is the next trigger point I have. So once the status gets approved, the Jenkins is going to get called by the Jira, and that is what I can show you in my configuration step here. So I have a JQL set status is equal to approved, then perform this build trigger. So yeah, here is also there where you can actually trigger the build periodically at this points, right? And these are all various parameters I have, the field names, which will be mapped to Jenkins parameter. And here is my pipeline script. Okay, so which is going to call a shell script internally 1041.sh and pass on some parameters there, and then it's going to make a comment update, and then it's going to make a change in the transition. Okay, and the transition would be from approved to built state here in this one, and the second one would do a deployment and perform some testing, and that would take care of updating it from deployment. From here it goes to the state as deployment, and the next one would be the testing, and this would take care of moving it to testing state. And once it is done, then the final PR file will be posted into the GitHub location, and the GitHub location is this. Okay, so the patch file would get directly released as part of the last release process. Okay, so let us see how the flow works now. So I just click on approve here. Meanwhile, let me go to the page where I can see the Jenkins status. So yeah, here you can see the status of all your pipeline builds, and I just mark it to approve. Yeah, note these are the parameters which will be used for calling the Jenkins build, right? So as you can see, once this is done, you should see a comment. Once it is triggered, it would put a comment that the build is actually scheduled for this. Yeah, so you can see the build is scheduled, and you could directly go from this URL. It would actually open same, which is open the other tab here, and this is the job running right now. This is the job running right now, and you can see here that I am printing here. So you can check this, the status of the job. It is moving. Okay. So we can also have a look at the console output, what is going on, and we could quickly jump on to this, and you can see all the states have been completed, and we can see the command output that this patch has been deployed to the DIS. Okay, and we can see that in the admin console as well. So yeah, so in the admin console tab, you would be able to see that. In the applications tab, and you pull down, we just did a CL, right? So here's the one. So D001 Tech 6 is the CR which we use, and it got updated as a patch to the DIS application. And you can see the status has been of this Jira, which was approved earlier, would have got released to release state, and now the user can just manually confirm is fine. Then you can just make it verified and just close this pipeline here. So that's about it from the Jira side as the pipeline demo. Let's go back to the presentation now. To summarize what we did in this stages again on the slides, right? So we tagged in the developer tool, and in the build phase, what we did is we in this build phase, what we did is we took the tagged objects and prepared a PR file out of it, and then we deployed the PR patch to the DIS, and we tried running the job here. Okay, you could actually have something to compare the output as well with some scripts, and then here we try to put the PR file onto a folder in the GitHub. Okay, that's how the entire process was done, right? So this is one way of triggering entire pipeline. So the second way of triggering is VCS based webhooks, where you can actually rely on the GitHub hooks on the Circle CI Jenkins, and then as soon as a commit is made to GitHub, a commit hash is sent to the Circle CI and the Jenkins, and the Jenkins or Circle CI can query on that to the using REST APIs, talk to GitHub, get all the objects which have been modified from the version control system, and they can invoke or generate query commands on DIS and perform the build, deploy, and test operations in parallel in a similar way. So yeah, so just to show you, this is one of the way it could have been done. So with the web service VCS based webhooks, so you could check out the mapping, modify the mapping, check in the mapping, and then make a commit. Once you commit, the Jenkins GitHub triggers onto the Jenkins, and you could see the Jenkins will trigger a build. And here, since you are using Jenkins, can actually there will be a script, the pipeline script will come in and fetch the committed details, identify the modified objects, make a list of those objects, and build DIS related queries to get those objects and deploy into a file, and then deploy the objects, deploy the files as application, and then run the mapping and check if it's valid output. If yes, then yes, successful, otherwise it failed. Or then yeah, this is other maintenance related commands you can do on. So coming to the last part, so there are some of the links I have added in this, which I've been using in this presentation. So I've just added them, which could be helpful. So the repo queries are very useful tool here because you need to find out the objects which you want to perform as a part of your patch deployment. So one way of doing it is using tags, which I felt was easier one, and can be customized to your needs. Whereas other way option is you could deploy, find out all the objects which are part of the application and just deploy them, or you can query them based on last modified date and then prepare a patch out of them, right? So these are the certain other options which you have. Yeah. So now we are open for any question and answers. Please let us know if you have any questions on this presentation, Dan.
Everyone, please post your questions in the Q&A box and we'll try and answer them.
So I see a question from Sandeep related to Power Center, that can we use this CICD features on Power Center? Of course, whatever is in the command line, you can still script it, and you can embed those commands into your Jenkins pipeline and still be able to do that. There should not be anything to stop. And there are some part of features which you can even run from Power Center, like we have a web service hub which can actually allow you to provide a SOAP request response based mechanism to run jobs. So even that is part of Power Center functionality, so you could actually use that. That can be leveraged there. But I don't. But yeah, rather my focus is on given mostly on the Power on the MRS side of code. But yeah, the CI/CD pipeline functionalities can still be added and automated as long as there is a command for that. Okay, I hope I answered Sandeep's question correctly. And yeah, I did give, Christoph, you had a question, you wanted some links. I think I have given the links in the presentation, but if you still need something, we can, there is a white paper also available in our knowledge base for this particular CI/CD functionality, which I've written. So you can also refer that, and there also you'll find some more reference links of third party, especially for Jenkins to Jira integration and things like that to set up the lab. And then we have a question from Alberto. Okay, so the question is request in Jira, make the change developer. After change is done, are you deploying the change in another IDK environment? Are just confirming the approval? Okay. So it's like this approval process has to be manual because the administrators are somebody who has privileged on the system, or maybe a developer lead might be doing the approval of task, right? So when he clicks on the approve, the job which I'm doing is currently in the same environment, but you can actually do it across environments as well. All you have to do is you just need to have some custom fields in your Jira to so that Jira can pass on the information to Jenkins that this deployment at this particular flow of operation has to be done on a different environment, right? So also, as I said, right, at the end goal can be a deployment. So when your job completes, you can actually move that artifact directly to your prod or UAT environments instead of moving to GitHub, as in my case, right? So that is also possible to do that. And so I see a question from Prashant. What type testing is being done at Jenkins deployment stage? Okay, so the testing phase can be anything. So there are multiple things you could try. One way to do it is you could have your unit test, like you are doing some join operations. You expect that when I pass a data A and B and the output should be something like C, you can actually validate that. So you could check the output of your mappings. But that is one way of doing it, the functionality wise. Otherwise, you can also have a comparison that, okay, when you did a deployment, you can also compare the objects which are there in the MRS, and after doing the change, what objects are there. So you can also do, so there is a REST API functionality available, compare, which you could use there. In our case, we are just running and making sure the job is running successfully, but if you want to really test it, you can actually test based on what logic you are having, right? Because every mapping has its own logic and would require each different phases of testing. So you could keep on adding test cases there. You could have a script to do a specific kind of test, maybe use parameters set and allow the parameters to be passed when the job is running, so that automatically you know what the output will be and you can compare the output automatically and declare it as failed or successful on the test side. So coming to the next question, Rahul, yeah, I think we have answered this question, that is it available for Power Center? So yes, you cannot, this presentation is not focusing on the what you call the MR on the Power Center side, but as I said, any commands like pmrep and pmcmd which are already available, you can script them and you can be that can be given out. Yes, so my presentation is just having a sample where I'm using a Jira and I'm using a Jenkins. So I think there is a question from Alan that can we do it from ServiceNow? As long as there is a mechanism to trigger some operations and they can make either REST API interaction or they could use the InfraCMD based interaction with the Informatica services, then yes, you can always do that. So Jira is a issue tracking system. So issue tracking, when I say, it means a kind of a bug tracking like Bitbucket or something. So ServiceNow, if it has a bug tracking system, something like that, which can be used, yes, then you can definitely go ahead and have it integrated. So in my case, I'm integrating with Jira to Jenkins. So you might have something on that lines. Okay, so Vinayak has asked a question, can we automate code migration of DX objects? So if I'm not wrong, you're talking about Informatica data exchange, is it right? Or you're talking about developer tool objects? Because there is little confusion always on the products, okay? So if it is there, developer tool objects, yes, that's what the whole presentation is all about, okay? But in case of DX object, I don't think we have anything on relation with the DX here, okay? Okay, and for the earlier versions, prior to 10.4, how is the CICD? I think Alberto has a very right question. Yes, this cannot be done for 10.4 versions and onwards. We have a REST API capability, but the InfraCMD capability always existed from earlier versions as well, and you could still use the InfraCMD based functionalities to perform your pipelines. But if you are looking for REST API based functionality, which you can run from anywhere without installing Informatica clients, then that is not present prior to 10.222. 10.2, it's available only from 10.4 version actually. Okay, so design MRS, as we said, right? So whatever you see in the developer tool is which you can divide into projects and you can add mappings and applications in that, right? So that is what is called as the design MRS. And the runtime MRS is whatever is deployed inside the DIS. Okay, so when you open the DIS and you see it's something in the applications tab, right? So the DIS saves it into its own reserved section of the MRS, and that reserved section we call as runtime MRS, which is read only, and you only deploy there and run the jobs. So that is the main thing, and it's kind of a runtime one. you're not going to make any modifications to it. You can only you cannot edit there. You can directly deploy objects there and run them. So that's but in case of design MRS, you are free to change any kind of changes, and yeah, that's the main differences we have. And also, when you say version controlled system, so the design MRS is going to have the version control system, and you can see that whatever your objects are there, you can have check in, check out of those objects and do it. Sandesh has a question. I think there are too many questions. I think we could try to prioritize on some of the questions. Okay. Yeah, so the important thing when you are discussing about CI/CD is we focus on automation. You can do automation entirely manually, or you could have some integration tool like Jenkins or Circle CI, which will help you. So that is one of the important things. So you can still be happily use your your command line InfraCMD scripts, which you might be using with AutoSys and things like that. But that is not helping you with the deployment processes and all. You are just having, most of the customers I see, they are using it for running the jobs, but not for doing deployments and doing development activities on that. So that can be done with the CI/CD pipeline. So that's why Jenkins and Circle CI based tools are recommended. But there are other tools also available in the market, and you are free to use any integration tool. Just that you ensure that you are having an automation of these pipelines fast, so that you can execute them. Yeah, so Informatica has a product which is part of the pipeline. So we do not have. So I'm trying to get a more clarity on the Arvind's question. Apart from Power Center and IDQ, we don't have any other CI/CD tools as Informatica offering. So CI/CD is a kind of a process, and Informatica is just is actually an entire product, right? So this is different than the process. So CI/CD is a process. It's for, you can have anything. If you have a Java programmer, you could have something like you fastly want to develop the Java code. So you could use Maven builds, and you could fire some scripts and do that. So it's about that. So I don't see any use case of. So there is a discrimination here. Like, okay, we need to understand this. CI/CD is a process, and anything which we expose as command line tools can be used here. Okay. So that's the important thing. So if there is any command line available for other products as well, you could use them. But if it is not, then I think there would be a need for making some change requests on those things if required. No problems I see with terms of GitLab. Okay, I've given a so Marco has a question that do we work with GitLab or GitHub? So we support both of them in 10.4, and I have myself given demo of our many customers on GitLab as well. So that should be should not have any difference in that, because internally they both use Git API. It's just that GitHub is exposed either as a private in an enterprise, or it would be exposed directly on the internet on the GitHub publicly. Okay, so Hina asked a very good question, but it's not related to MRS, but it's related to Power Center on Web Service Hub, which I think I already answered. But what you need to do is you have command lines for doing PMRep commands like export, import, version, check-in, check-out also can be done. You also have deployment queries in Power Center. You could actually use them, and you could trigger scripts to perform those operations. Just that in a Power Center does not have a version control system which can be third party. Like Power Center has its own version control system, whereas in case of MRS, you can have your version control of your choice. If you are fine with Perforce, you use Perforce. You want GitHub, you can use GitHub. But in case of Power Center, it is always the Power Center repository itself takes care of these things. I'm not sure of TFS, but if it is a kind of setup which can actually have a flow and workflow levels, like you can track your issues, then definitely. Because even I have seen even in GitLab there is a issue tracker, so that works fine. And there are even some issue trackers which comes from the Bugzilla as well, right? So it's all about can you which suits your organization which you are already using. If you already have some products which are being used with this kind of tracking systems, so better to integrate Informatica with that rather than going for a new one. That's what is my suggestion. So can we adapt to same approach with IICS? I would like to park this question, Christopher. I would like because that is something I don't think I have the expertise. I would like to park this question and check it on. The question is, can we use the same approach for IICS? So I have not worked with IICS, but if there is a mechanism to allow you to run with command lines or REST APIs, definitely it's the same thing. It should not have any difference at all. Yeah, Marco, I think I answered the question. It's integrating with GitLab and GitHub. There should not be any problems. We have used GitLab also and given demo to customers recently, so it should not be having any problems as well. So having a choice of MRS is multiple MRS for doing CI/CD. It's not really needed, but you can always have. I see it's more common to have a dev MRS, QA MRS, and prod MRS. Irrespective of whether you have two MRS or not, the design MRS and runtime MRS are going to be the is different. So the runtime MRS is always the MRS which is associated with your DIS. Okay, so it is always going to be that one. So don't consider that you need two MRS for, you can use the same MRS for design as well as runtime, okay, same MRS service, but there is a logical bisection here. What you see in developer tool is going to be in your design MRS, and what you don't see in developer tool, what you do not, which is deployed directly onto the DIS, right? Only those things are going to be in a subsection under that MRS. Okay, so Rahul has a question. If two objects are being deployed via single tag, and if needed to roll back the deployment of only one object, okay, how can it be done? Okay, so basically what you're trying to do here is you are saying that you have two objects deployed, okay, and you want to undeploy. So the better ask would be that you need to come up with a different query and undeploy. But I don't think you have an option of undeploying single object from your application. Okay, so you would need to come up with some other questions. So maybe Jaijo, you could check on this, right? So this question from Rahul is that if we needed to roll back the deployment of only one object in the application, so you can actually remove that particular object and deploy the object itself entirely. So that should take care of it. But if there are any other ways around, maybe I can park this question and update it in the end. Okay, so that particular thing I can update on this. So I think Vrinda is recording his this meeting is recorded, so I think we can. Mulenga has a question that it can be recorded. Yeah, it will be shared, right? Yeah, so it will be shared to everybody.
Sure.
Yeah. Marcos, we don't have ready-made our labs available, but if you, but I think most of the software which I used are actually free and they are available as trial versions. At least Jira is available for 30 days trial. You could try out with all the features in it, and that's what I did in my demo as well. So, and once you find that is fine, then you could actually, based on their, this one you could take it up. But yeah, we don't have our own separate labs for that. But anything which is free is available because it's an outside third-party tools which we are using in this part, right, for the CICD. Yeah, I think Marcos the same question. So, so Freddy has a question. It is available on Power Center, similar to MS. Can we see the same information? Yeah. So, as I said, when I say CICD, I'm talking about the automation, but yeah, patching functionality is not available. Freddy. This is something which is only present in MRS, and it's not available in PCRS for sure. Anything which is available as a command line which you could do is fine. You cannot even do something like that from developer tool as well. So I don't think that's something you can also do it. So something which you could do manually and has a command line available, you could automate in the Power Center, but not anything others which are not present. Okay, so Megan has a problem with the downloading of the slides, Vrinda. Maybe I'll keep it out, that question out. Okay.
Sure.
Yes. So I see a question from Hariharan, right? So Hariharan, the question is similar to compare mapping options in Power Center. Do we have a compare option in developer? So we do not have a compare option in developer as such, but we do have a but you do have a JSON comparison you could get with the CICD feature. I think I also explained it in the demo as well, that you have a compare feature which you could use. And also somebody asked a question during testing. So compare is one more useful feature which you could also do in the testing phase to see whether you really want to deploy it or not. As well, you can actually keep up, even you can decide whether you want to deploy it or not based on the comparing the object in the runtime MRS with the design time MRS in first shot. And Sampath has a question: does Power Center server components are being deployed and using Docker, and how does enterprise team who currently use on-premise ETL architecture, how does this work? Okay, first of all, for the CI/CD, Power Center is not aware of CI/CD, but you make your CI/CD tools use Power Center command line functionalities and make it work. So that's the main aspect. So I do not see most of the on-premise systems, they which I am aware of, do not have any kind of functionality as it. They do have a system for the client setups where they use Docker machines to create a Citrix-based cloud or client-based communication system. But normally, it is always seen that customers use the physical server or a dedicated virtual machines for their servers for using Informatica, for running Informatica jobs, because they are very high on the performance end. No, Freddy, that's right. I think I answered this question, but anyways, I'll respond that Power Center has its own version control system, so it cannot be used, but you can keep your exported objects onto your GitHub, and as a release, if you're having a delivery goal, then you can actually have that part in your Power Center's system also, you could do that. But ideally, as I said Power Center has its own version control system. It cannot be used with third-party version control systems like Perforce or GitHub or anything like that. Okay, Eli, I think I answered the question. CI/CD framework for Power Center. I think this is the most popular question in this list now, and it's. We have, I definitely see that you can, as I can tell you, you can use web service hub, you can use PM rep commands, you can use PMCD commands in shell scripts and do that, but you won't have many functionalities which are not present in Power Center, will not be present in for you to work on the CI/CD framework. But anything which is available as a command line from Power Center, you could do them by customizing your pipeline tools like Jenkins. Okay, so Prashant made a valid question. So in my demo, I have shown that we are using CI/CD pipelines, and at the end, I'm pushing the code to the GitHub. But what is happening there is that when you are doing this, the GitHub is serving as a repository. Let's say, for example, if Informatica is releasing its product, what would it do? We release on the TSFTP site so that customers can download it from there, right? So that means we are releasing it and you could consume that. So you are creating a mapping and you are releasing it to your local consumers, and the consumers can consume from there. Or maybe you do it from your dev environment and just release it for your UAT users. Okay, the UAT users can consume it from there. So that is the point of having a delivery mechanism, and that's what is covered in this demo. You are free to actually go and then directly deploy it as well, not necessary to do it. And yes, Docker, Jenkins, in my demo I'm not using Docker, but if you are using Circle CI, which is a famous Docker based integration tool, you could always go for that. Okay, Azure DevOps pipelines and GitHub. I have not readily have any documentation handy on this, but it is actually going to be a third-party product discussion itself. So if GitHub has mechanisms, so GitHub already has a standard code present, and I think in Azure there are certain pipeline triggers which can be used, but I do not have any documentations handy right away, but you could actually use them when you can actually run. So if you need any, if you are still not able to find any documentations or need some help, I think IPS can also help it here, or we can also, if there are any specific questions, then even support can help in some kind of cases. No, I don't see a future of a power center using version control system. As far as I know from the product management, that's not something in the pipeline. But it might be there. I cannot guarantee on whether it will be there, but at least currently it is not there. That we are not going to looking for adding a version control based system to power center, separate version control system for power center. Yes, Vinayak, your question was, can we use CICD in BDM? Yes, definitely. That's where we are all going to. And most of the targeting of the MRS was done with terms of BDM requirement, that there were a lot of agile products coming in, and there need a lot of quick changes to be done and deployed, and keep on going live for every set of operations back to back. And that's where the use case actually came in from, and it got implemented in our 10.4 like this. Similarly, one question from Sampath. If we need specific help on CI/CD pipeline, can you provide some document links and also process to engage your team so as to do a feasibility study? Yeah, so there is something like IPS can be involved for this one. Okay, and if you have any, if you are able to set up, because I think the available information with which you can see, all you need is you need a version control system, you need a issue tracking system, okay, and you need an integration system like Jenkins or some control tool which you could run the jobs for you. If you have these three things, you can actually come up with your own architecture and which will suit your own needs, and you can customize it. In case you face any difficulty, like you don't know how to do some operations or how to get some information on the from the Informatica perspective, like say you do not know how to find out a comparison activity, or you are not able to, or if some command is not working as you are expecting, then definitely Informatica support can directly get in and help you in that one. But as far as the feasibility study is concerned, I think most of the tools which I have given the demo are also freely available. You could try them, but if you already have some issue tracking, version control system, and continuous integration tool being used, then you can directly make it work with the commands. And I don't think you require any special product details, but yeah, I can provide you the Informatica documentation, the InfaCMD command reference guide, one of the major source for all your InfaCMD script functionalities, and the application service guide will guide you for creating and configuring them. But if you need any, if you face any difficulties in that, we can help you. Feasibility study, I would see whether if you are looking for something on the POC front, then probably sales team, you can reach out and they can help you with that, and accordingly come up with a plan for you. That would be the right procedure. So sales team could be the right person to redirect you to directly to the issues. But if you are already started it and you are in middle of something and you need help, yeah, support can help you from there. So I think I have answered all of the questions which I have seen so far. But if there is any questions, please feel free to ask it again.
Yeah, looks like we have answered most of the questions, Praveen. We are over our time and we need to wind this up. Probably we'll get back to you. If we have any pending questions, we'll get back to you after this session. Thanks for this brilliant session, Praveen. Also, thanks for joining this webinar, everyone. Hope everyone is safe and sound at this point. Thanks a lot. See you during our next webinar.